Hi all. Today I'm going to talk about reliability modeling and reliability aware design. Now, as you may know, previously I uploaded a presentation or a tutorial on advanced circuit design and circuit simulation. However, that was more focused on basically compact modeling and its relation to circuit simulation. Uh, this time I am going to, however, digress a little bit and talk about reliability modeling and how those models can be used to effectively design any analog or RF circuit, and hence you know which is basically also termed as reliability aware design. Let's see how it goes. So these are the fundamentals of reliability modeling in short. So unlike in compact modeling, wherein you measure the data on a so-called single die, which is golden die, which represents the mean or the typical behavior of the device which is to be modeled. In reliability modeling, on the contrary, you basically require statistics. And hence the data that is used to model and create a reliability model is usually collected on lots of samples. So you will basically have a wafer with a kind of distribution, statistical distribution in its, let's say if it's a MOSFET, it will have a distribution in its threshold voltage, in its mobility, and all sorts of statistical variation. And then what you do is that you collect as many samples as you can using let's say automated probe station usually, and you have basically cascades probe stations. In fact, I've measured I've done in fact kind of programming so that you can basically measure all the dies and measure all the reliability stress data using a probe station and a software. And another thing that you do is basically you stress the device. And why you stress the device is because you want to see how the device degrades. So for example, if the maximum VDD of a device is 5 volts, you will, let's say, stress the device to 6 volt. And by doing so, what you will be actually doing is accelerating the stress, right? So so that you don't have to, let's say, subject a device to 10 years of stress. Instead of that, you can, let's say, subject it for 3 days, and then see how the device degrades, and then let's say create a model that you can extrapolate to 10 years. And this is very fundamental to reliability modeling, that you basically stress the device to accelerate the stress, number one, and number two, you stress the device above its rated voltages and currents. However, that much stress, you will stress it so that it doesn't break down. That is another important point. The second point is that, so basically the second point is stress the device above its rating, however do not damage the device, right? And number three is, as I explained earlier, you measure not only one device or only the golden die, but you measure some statistically significant number of devices, and then use the mean or median data and the max min to create a model, and then you can incorporate into the corresponding compact model. Now let me take an example of this. My example today will be modeling of NBTI, which stands for negative bias temperature instability. Now let's see how we model it. Okay, so following is an example of NBTI, which stands for negative bias temperature instability, which occurs in PMOS devices. However, you should also remember there is a corresponding PBTI, which is positive bias temperature instability for NMOS devices, whose explanation in terms of polarity will be reversed, basically compared to what I'll be explaining for NBTI. So that is understood. Now, okay, NBTI occurs in PMOS due to the out diffusion of hydrogen from the passivated bonds at SiO2 channel to gate dielectric interface. So this is what I am showing. This is the channel region, the silicon bulk, and obviously the part of bulk is the channel here, and the SiO2, which is gate oxide, wherein I'm showing hydrogen which is introduced in one of the processing steps so as to passivate the dangling bonds that present because of the crystal mismatch between the Si and SiO2. And just to give you an idea, rough idea, the interface trap density NIT, if this is not done, is around 10 raised to power 12 to 10 raised to power 13 per centimeter square electron volt. And this was the case when in the earlier silicon technologies from 70s, wherein people were not able to get this right, get this gate interface between the silicon channel and the gate oxide. They are not able to get this passivated, and that's why the devices suffered huge degradation in terms of their threshold voltage shifts. Basically, let's say at time equal to 0, if you have some certain threshold voltage at time equal to some t dash, your threshold voltage would have shifted in such a way that you no longer have the device that you actually designed, basically. So that was a problem in 70s and probably early 80s, and that was solved by introducing hydrogen as a passivation for this silicon dangling bonds at this interface. And so a typical values now, industry standard values for this interface trap density are 10 is for 10 per centimeter square electron volt. Now, what do I mean that by out diffusion of hydrogen? So I would like you to see this, chemical equation. You have silicon covalently bonded with hydrogen right now, okay? Now, if you increase the temperature of this system, or you increase the electric field from, which is basically you are going to apply from gate to the channel, right? From gate to channel. No matter whether it's positive or negative, doesn't matter. Why? Because this is a field enhanced process, and what field does is that if your electric field is high, this bond can break down. And once the bond breakdowns, no matter what is the direction of the field, this hydrogen, which is hydrogen, you can say hydrogen species, will diffuse. It will have a tendency to diffuse out in this manner, basically. Hold on, like this. It will kind of diffuse towards the polysilicon gate. Again, another hydrogen species can diffuse. So with the increasing temperature and field, this can happen. The bond can break down and this hydrogen species can diffuse towards the gate. And what will be left with? Silicon plus Si plus, because now you have a absence of electron in the covalent bonding, and a plus hydrogen species, right, which I am representing here. Furthermore, these hydrogen species can combine into hydrogen, elemental hydrogen, and then that hydrogen itself can out diffuse towards the gate. So essentially what this picture is called as, this model of NBTI is called as reaction diffusion model. Why reaction diffusion? Because the reaction is occurring at this interface, which is dissociating the bond, and that reaction is getting accelerated by temperature and field, and it is producing Si and hydrogen, and plus the SiH created by some other SiH bond, covalent bond, can also generate hydrogen, elemental hydrogen, which can again out diffuse, because hydrogen is the lightest element, so it easily tends to out diffuse. But what it leaves with is increase in the NIT, or increase in the interface trap density, which basically is again going to do a shift in threshold voltage, unintended shift in the threshold voltage of the device, which is, and generally that will again increase, that will tend to basically increase the direction of the threshold voltage, which for analog and RF devices will reduce their gate drive capability and does degrade their performance. Right? Now this reaction is also reversible, right? So if I reduce the temperature, or I reduce the magnitude of electric field, the vertical gate electric field, then this can go back. All this can perhaps go back. This hydrogen can go back and again passivate the silicon dangling bonds at the gate to channel interface. Now, this is in brief a discussion on this process. As I explained, this process is a strong function of gate bias and temperature. And another important property of BTI in general is that it is not a function of the geometry of the device, the width and length of the MOSFET. It is basically uniform across the channel. And another important point that that I want to make here, that as I already mentioned, reliability models are generated out of statistical distribution. That is, you measure the statistics. And so, what will be the statistics of this reaction diffusion model, or this BTI process or BTI phenomenon? Basically, or in other words, if I ask you, what distribution, what kind of statistical distribution should this follow? Well, since this phenomenon is happening kind of discretely, that is, one bond breaks, another bond breaks, then something happens, then this out diffusion happens, then all the things happen, and then you can model using the forward and reverse reaction rates, or the kinetic theory of reaction rates. You can model this and then convert it into electrical equivalent modeling. So that is how it is actually done. However, what my question is that what kind of distribution will this be? Will it be Gaussian? No, because Gaussian is what kind of random variable? A continuous random variable. That is where a Gaussian distribution is defined. For a discrete random variable, which is the case here, because this process is occurring discretely, one bond breaking, another bond breaking, and it's a random process, because not all the bonds break when you increase the temperature and field. That's why it's going to be a statistically distributed process, and the kind of distribution obviously that it will follow will be Poisson in nature. So it's a Poisson distribution, and the ramification of this observation will be clear in the next slide. So as I explained in the previous slide, this NBTI or BTI in general will follow Poisson distribution in its statistics. So in this diagram, I have stressed a p-type device which is rated at 5 volt to 6 volt. So generally you will take 10 or 20% more than the rated voltage of the device. And this voltage is such that it will not cause any TDDB, that is time dependent dielectric breakdown, or any kind of dielectric breakdown in the device. Now, as you see, if I plot, what I plotted on y-axis is the sigma, or the standard deviation. Rho square will be the variance of the data. And on the x-axis, I have plotted the square root of the mean, And in this formula, as you can see, this is the actual, if you use device physics, you can actually prove that the variance is proportional to square root of some constant times the mean divided by Cox times W times L. So as you can see clearly here, that the variance is basically proportional to the mean of this process, and that is what is true also for a Poisson distribution. So from this graph, you can see that NBTI itself is a Poissonian process. Now, okay, let's say you model NBTI, you model PBTI, and then you also model something called as hot carrier degradation, which is basically injection of hot carriers into the gate oxide, which cause threshold voltage degradation and also the mobility degradation because of the increased carrier scattering. So if you consider all of these processes such as HCI, NBTI, PBTI, and let's say you want to simulate all, let's say these three reliability mechanisms on your RF or analog circuits, you have an excellent tool called as RelExpert, which is available in Cadence environment, Cadence analog design environment, Cadence ADE. So it's basically a tool developed by Cadence to simulate MOSFET devices for device degradation due to various reliability mechanisms. Currently, however, it doesn't support TDDB, which is time dependent dielectric breakdown. However, you can easily code it into it, and that I'm not going to discuss right now. Now, from the perspective of a compact model simulation, this RelExpert or in general reliability simulation output can be seen as a corner in time which always proceeds towards the slow corner when simulated from the typical corner. Now, let me explain what I want to say here. Let's say I have drain current versus the gate voltage characteristics of a typical MOSFET device for any drain voltage. So this typical simulation could stand for a linear region or saturation region, any region that you wish to simulate, right? And this is also called as beginning of life, because why? This is time equal to 0 simulation. Okay, so this is the beginning of life. This orange color is the beginning of life simulation of a particular device. And assume that I have a full blown PDK, that I am process design kit, by which I am simulating this typical corner. Okay, now also given in PDKs are fast and slow corners, which are also taken at time equal to 0, because as I said earlier, these models are generated by the statistical distribution to model the plus minus 3 sigma of a given device from generally the PT, that is parametric test measurements performed in foundries, right? And what they represent is the fast corner represents lower threshold voltage and higher drain current, while the slow corner represents higher threshold voltage and lower drain current. Whereas typical corner is something that I already mentioned, is the golden die that you measure. Whatever the measurements you do on that, they are basically what is a typical corner simulation. And sometimes in spite of the golden die, you will again, when you know that you are going to have some different typical corner, you again tune the model parameters of a typical compact model and shift them to again match the IOS typical values. IOS stands for initial objective specification of the device. Okay, so this is basically the corner simulation and and what they stand for. Now, what is end of life or the RelExpert simulation is that, let's say, or RelExpert or reliability simulation is that, now suppose you implement these HCI, NBTI, PBTI as equations into your compact model, and let's say if you have a method to calculate, let's say I give a time, let's say after 10 years. After 10 years, I want to see how these characteristics will shift. So what I can do is that I can implement the HCI, NBTI, PBTI models, which are basically the stress models generated, as I explained in the previous slides, which have some form of equation, and that equation basically you assume that that equation, for that limited stress time for which you created that equation out of, you assume that that equation is also valid for, let's say, 10 years. So you basically stress the device for 10,000 seconds and it was accelerated stress. And then you assume that the equation derived from that stress modeling will be valid also for 10 years or 20 years. And then you implement that into the compact models using the tool called RelExpert in Cadence environment. Alternately, you can also use some Verilog A code to implement the reliability models. So essentially RelExpert, I'm not promoting RelExpert. RelExpert is not the only tool. You can do it in other fashion also. However, since I'm going to describe this implementation in Cadence environment, that's the reason I'm describing the RelExpert here. So then what you can do is that you can create another model, let's say a sub-circuit model, in which I'll be modeling the degradation in the threshold voltage due to, let's say, HCI, NBTI and PBTI, and the degradation in the current due to HCI, and then I can do a combined simulation of all those phenomena and then create this curve, this black curve, which I will call as end of life simulation. So this completes a description of reliability model. So what a reliability model is. So basically, in nutshell, what a reliability model is that it is a corner in time, what the time that I specify, generated out of models that have been created out of stress data and have been modeled using statistical distribution in the data measured. So one simple way to explain how any reliability simulation will be done is to see this device. So this left hand side device is basically the beginning of life device, which is the bare, whatever the sub-circuit model or a simple model that a PDK has of a, let's say, a MOSFET. So you have drain, gate, source terminals, and inside this you can have a sub-circuit, big sub-circuit model which models the device cross-section, the parasitics, and all that stuff. Now the same model, how you can model in terms of reliability or end of life model will be, let's say you model a threshold voltage by a voltage source in series with the gate, which will essentially model the delta VT, and this delta VT will be basically a combination of delta VT due to hot carrier injection plus delta VT due to BTI, which is bias temperature instability, and plus delta VT due to any other mechanism that you can encounter in a MOSFET. Similarly, you can also model the degradation in the current by a current source in parallel with the from drain to source, which will model the degradation in the drain current, and which in general will be a function of the drain current. Why? Because more is the drain current, more will be the hot carriers that might be injected. So generally the delta ID is generally, when I say delta ID, it is generally for HCI. So delta ID is basically delta ID due to HCI and plus other degradations such as, let's say, substrate induced HCI, non-conducting HCI, those other mechanisms that have been defined. However, remember that generally, BTI doesn't add any effect to the drain current. It just shifts the gate overdrive. It affects the drain current through the shift in the gate overdrive voltage. Because why? Because if my VT threshold voltage increases, it will reduce the gate drive current. So indirectly, this BTI is going to affect ID. So there is no direct correlation. However, this indirect correlation exists. That if I have BTI, it will reduce ID, and if ID reduces, it will also affect the delta ID in the simulation, right? So this is how you model. Another important thing is that this delta ID, for example, in RelExpert simulation, the way it reports is that it reports the delta ID in percent, and then that percent output, which is generally reported in .bo0 or .ba0 file in the Cadence environment. You can also use that output to create your own sub-circuit models based on your theory or your particular inclination to model this phenomenon. You can use your own equations to in fact model the delta ID and the delta VT of the device. However, that is beyond the scope of current discussion. So suffice to say, this is the beginning of life model and this is the end of life model in RelExpert and in general reliability simulation. Another important point that is to be seen is how analog or RF circuit design is generally done using the corner models. First, typically a RF or analog circuit designer will simulate the typical corner, which is to make sure that you are meeting all the initial objective specifications of the design. Then generally temperature simulation occurs to see whether temperature wise how the circuit fares. Then generally, which is the most important thing, at the nominal temperature you will simulate the slow corner to test how the reduction in the gate overdrive. Why? Because slow corner means increase in the threshold voltage and decreasing current. So how will that degradation in the overall bias point, and as you know, the bias point is a very important thing in for amplifiers or phase lock loops or LNAs and PAs. So how will that shift in the operating point affect the circuit output, right? And finally, fast corner. And generally this is optional. Why? Because in most cases corner simulation represents a better circuit simulation output in most of the cases, and that's why this is something that is skipped in most of the designs. And now Real expert or reliability as a corner. Right now, I've seen that people rely mostly on the slow corner to simulate the the worst case scenario. However, in my view and in my experience, rel expert or reliability should be now treated as a corner, and uh, wherein you simulate uh, a circuit vis-a-vis a time t dash, and check whether whether the simulation output exceeds the plus minus 3 sigma value of the model or of the corner, especially the slow corner. Why? Because if, let's say, in the simulation after some 10 years, if the threshold voltage shift is such that it exceeds the 3 sigma value, then what it means is that your device is or those particular set of devices which are undergoing that particular stress in that particular circuit have exceeded the guarantee from the foundry, the plus minus 3 sigma variation or 6 sigma process control that is given, assurance, that is 6 sigma process control assurance that is given by the foundry. And that is the reason why reliability, this is the foundational discussion of reliability aware design. That is why you should use reliability models, is that sometimes the simulation may exceed the 3 sigma value beyond the slow corner, and that represents a worst corner in your simulation. And uh, that is the reason why reliability simulation is gaining much traction in highly scaled processes. Why? Because as you go on scaling the channel length of the transistor, you are experiencing, you are going to increase basically the experience, you are going to increase the reliability problems, especially the HCI and BTI. So uh, this is basically the foundational explanation of reliability aware design. Now, a slight digression here. I will like to explain the difference between the Spectre native mode and the RelExpert mode of simulation in Cadence environment. Basically, if you want to simulate reliability, and if you go click on reliability in the ADE option, you will see this simulator mode, and it will say Spectre native or RelExpert. Fundamentally, these two produce the same output. However, the netlists that are generated, with these selection are different. For example, if you select the Spectre native mode, it adds this kind of reliability block, in which uh, which is basically a simulator directive to Spectre simulator to simulate the reliability. Whereas if you select the RelExpert mode, which is also the older mode, because basically the RelExpert earlier, and historically it was implemented in the Spice language. That's why you can see that whenever you select the RelExpert mode, it says the simulator lang equal to Spice. So it no longer uses its proprietary Spectre simulator. The Cadence doesn't, if you select the RelExpert mode, it doesn't anymore uses its Spectre language. It uses the Spice mode, the Spice language mode, and implements the same basically statements in Spice format. So this is the basic difference between the Spectre native and the RelExpert mode of simulation. So I'm going to give you an example of RelExpert simulation now using, let's say, a common source amplifier which I have designed here in Cadence environment. As you can see, I have a bias T here which is feeding the AC source and the DC source, DC feed, through DC feed inductor and capacitor here, which blocks DC and allows the AC. And then I have a main transistor MOSFET which has a RelExpert model implemented for it, which I have myself done it. And then you have a resistance and capacitance at the output, and VDD and everything. So this is my common source amplifier schematic. And this is the stress simulation output after, let's say, 10 years of aging for the device. And as as you can see, the let's say current For example, the green color, the green upper green color, as you can see, is the drain current for a single sinusoidal output, for a single time period. You can see that the drain current is higher than the drain current, which is a cyan color just below it. That is the drain current after 10 years of degradation for the same device. This device is, in this device, I have implemented the hot carrier injection effects and not the BTI effects into it. And you can see that basically instead there won't be a threshold shift, but threshold voltage shift, but there will be the current shift after degradation. And another thing that you can see is that I have not, I can actually increase the degradation. Let's say I increase the degradation coefficient so that the delta ID is very high. This current can shift, let's say here, by a lot of percentage. Suffice to say, this simulation is just showing the degradation in the current. And with that degradation in current, you can also see how the drain to source waveform, which is the fresh waveform, is the red, or the beginning of life simulation is the red, and the yellow is the end of the life simulation. So there is a corresponding increase in the VDS waveform corresponding to the decrease in the current. Another example of a circuit level reliability simulation or circuit level reliability simulation using RelExpert is following. I have a cascode configuration, that is, I have a series combination of N MOSFETs, which is a typical configuration used in both LNAs and PAs, and that's why I took this example deliberately. And let's say I have increased the VDD stress from 1 volt to 1.5 volt, as you can see here in the circuit schematic. And this, now let's see how reliability simulation will affect this. Notice that, let's say if I have a gate overdrive of 400 millivolt here, I have a corresponding gate overdrive of 900 millivolt to take into consideration the voltage drop of VGS here and the VDS here, right? So that is a typical, typical design of a cascode configuration, which I will not get into detail of. And here is a sample reduction in the bias current. As you can see, the bias current after 10 years of simulation from the same model, which showed negligible degradation for an individual device. You can see it was even below 1% of drain current degradation. However, when used as a cascode, the same model is now predicting a 6.9% degradation in the I bias of the cascode configuration. And there is for the voltage VDS waveform, it is reporting a reduction of 27.23% in the V bias for VDD stress of 1.5 volt. So you can see that the amount of degradation has now increased in this cascode configuration. And even though the individual device, that's why the importance of reliability modeling and reliability circuit simulation is that even though individual device might not show that much of degradation when you implement the reliability model, however, when you use it as a circuit, let's say in this cascode configuration, you can see a huge degradation, let's say in terms of the V bias and the I bias. And that is the reason why reliability aware design is very important for designing RF or analog circuits, especially in the technologies which suffer from the reliability from the various reliability degradations. Now, however, in the title of slide, I am saying here that this is a sample flow for RelExpert model, RF RelExpert model development. Why I'm saying RF? Because RF, you can say, is a kind of a subset of, in general, analog circuit design. And because the models that are generally right now developed are for the DC stress, that is, you will, let's say, give some stress voltage to the gates, some DC stress voltage to the drain, and then see how the degradation proceeds. AC degradation, however, is generally less than the DC degradation, and that's why historically people have not stressed the devices for AC degradation. However, certain kinds of circuits such as power amplifiers, wherein you have very large signal, you know, and wherein the dynamic load line can take the local quiescent points along a huge locus. That is, instead of a straight load line, you have a kind of a huge sweep in the IDS VDS characteristics. In such kind of cases, basically purely models that are based on purely DC stress might not be that much effective. And so right now you can use the DC stress models to see the effects on the bias point degradation fundamentally, and that is how you you can, and then whatever the bias point degradation is, whatever the bias point degradation is in the circuit, that will basically point out to the other advanced or further degradation in the RF or analog circuits. Let's say GM by ID ratio. How will this, you can actually simulate the GM by ID degradation, let's say, in order to see the effect on your analog circuit, or let's say how the noise figure NF of an LNA degrades due to the degradation in the bias point. So suffice to say, the current models in the RelExpert or reliability that are based on the DC stress models can basically give you the degradation due to fundamentally the degradation in the bias point in the circuit. But what about RF degradation? The next point to see is RF degradation. So my proposal is that what we should do is that we should evaluate how much capacitance degradation is there in a typical device. Why? Because what is going to be RF degradation? RF degradation is basically going to come from the various degradation in various capacitances such as CGD, CGS, or CDS of the device, and which are currently not modeled. They are for example, CGD and CGS degradation is indirectly modeled in terms of the threshold voltage shift. However, the compact models don't take into consideration there is no formulation as such. Let's say that how much delta CGS will be there or delta CGD will be there, and that is why and that delta CGS and delta CGD will basically affect what? FT and Fmax. Why? Because let's say FT is a function of CGD and CGS, right? GM, CGD, and CGS. So if GM is degraded by, let's say, the DC point operating point degradation, that is the only thing that right now can be modeled from the DC stress model. However, the current DC stress models cannot model, or they have not modeled, the CGS and CGD degradation explicitly. And that's why we really need the data on delta CGS and delta CGD, and then implement, if you implement that also additionally into the sub-circuit model or the end-of-life model, you will be getting a end-of-life model which also models the true RF degradation. And then those RF or AC stress models can then be further utilized to simulate the circuits and your RF circuits or analog circuits, and then check their degradation and design your and keep your design methodology according to the true RF or RF stress model. And finally, what does a typical circuit designer want? From my experience of almost now 10 years in industry and another 3 years into compact model development, he or she doesn't care about the underlying physics or the mode of implementation, the way I explained in the previous slides. All they want is that a method to simulate their design and an assurance from the foundry and especially the modeling team and the reliability team that the method is hardware verified. Now, compact models already take this into account by a superb combination of the device physics and semi-empirical equations. And in this light, I see RelExpert, or you can develop your own reliability tool. It doesn't mean that you have to use only RelExpert. This reliability simulation can be seen as a part of corner methodology, which aids the reliability of your design, and also this corner methodology, I'm not just creating out of thin air. It is right now the industry standard. It is now right now industry standard, widely adopted by the design community. And what I feel is that all of the reliability physics, including the DC and RF stress models generated out of it, must be now incorporated as a part of compact modeling flow, so that it can be incorporated further into the simulation methodology, which ultimately will result in an excellent and robust reliability aware design. And here is a sampled proposed flow for the RelExpert enablement in the Cadence PDK. What you should do is that you should first calibrate the RelExpert models generated with respect to the typical corner models of a given process, to ensure that the simulation output from both the compact model and RelExpert are hardware verified and are consistent with each other. Then those generated models and those generated models can be normal, DC stress based models. That is, you just stress the gate, just stress the drain, stress both the gate and drain, DC stress, and then use the statistics to create the models, as I already explained. And then you can implement according to current methodology. However, that will only talk about the degradation due to the operating point degradation and not due to the capacitance degradation, explicit capacitance degradation, as I explained earlier. Then to start with, you can use the DC stress models. Then what you can do is that stress the data on various circuits like P-gauge LNAs, and then see that the DC stress models, are they enough or sufficient for those RF or analog circuits that have from which you have measured the circuit level data. And then any discrepancy, if that is there, you can actually map it back to the lack of capacitance degradation or any other degradation, any other small signal element degradation, and then model it back into the RelExpert or your reliability tool. And furthermore, you can also do what that will do is that it will also support the frequency domain analysis, for example AC, SP or harmonic balance, and you can then see the degradation output, and you can compare basically the degradation output in the frequency domain, which is very important for many key important RF circuits. And then once this work is done by the reliability and modeling team together, the EDA team can then integrate all this thing into Cadence environment, that is the Cadence PDK, and you can create the test cases and then give those test cases to your customer as a foundry, to save the customer's time, and so that the customer does it with a proper understanding. And this is my proposed flow for reliability and enablement in let's say Cadence PDK. I am uploading all this tutorial series based on my experience as in semiconductor industry, and I would like to have your feedback which will increase basically by my enthusiasm to create even more tutorial slides or lecture slides or on these topics. And I hope that this will be this endeavor will be useful for budding semiconductor professionals or even students who are doing their masters or PhD in microelectronics in general. And I hope that you guys will come back to me with some questions, and I will be glad to answer them maybe in my next upload. Thank you all. Have a great day.